Direct News TV. December 10, 2023. Israel-Hamas war live, Israeli air strike kills 10 Palestinians in Gaza. There is no safe place to go in the Gaza Strip, Palestinian Health Ministry says, as Israeli strike kills 10 people in Khan Yunis. More destruction across occupied West Bank as Israeli raids continue across the occupied territories. Netanyahu expresses displeasure at Russia's position against Israel. In a phone conversation with President Putin, Israel's PM Netanyahu spoke about his displeasure with Moscow's positions against Israel expressed at the UN and other forums. The Prime Minister emphasized that any country that would suffer a criminal terrorist attack such as Israel experienced would act with no less force than the one in which Israel operates, read a statement from the PM's office. The statement added that Netanyahu also strongly criticized the dangerous cooperation between Russia and Iran. Israeli forces shoot at ambulance, assault paramedic. Israel's military has shot at an ambulance carrying critically wounded patients, while beating up and abusing a paramedic, the Palestinian Red Crescent Society says. The attack came as 6 ambulances belonging to the Palestinian Red Crescent carried 11 patients from Al-Ali Baptist Hospital in Gaza City to another hospital in the south, the organization said in a statement on X. The trip was coordinated with the UN, which escorted the ambulances. The Palestinian Red Crescent said the ambulances had to stop for hours at several checkpoints and for military inspections, during which one of the wounded patients died. Near one of the checkpoints, Israeli forces opened fire on one of the ambulances. At a separate checkpoint while heading south, Israeli forces detained, beat up and stripped one of the traveling paramedics, the Palestinian Red Crescent said. The medic was then forced to walk across a checkpoint handcuffed and unclothed, it added. Hamas actions do not justify Israel's punishment of Palestinians, Russia's FM Sergei Lavrov says it is unacceptable for Israel to use Hamas's offensive on October 7 as justification for the collective punishment of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Lavrov also called for international monitoring on the ground in the besieged enclave. Russian President Putin has repeatedly blamed the Israel-Hamas war on the failure of years of U.S. diplomacy in the Middle East. Palestinian workers in limbo after Israel revokes permits. Before the Israel-Gaza war, more than 150,000 Palestinians from the occupied West Bank worked in Israel. But many have since been banned, depriving families and the Palestinian economy of much-needed revenue. Some workers now say that even if the ban is lifted, they will not be going back. Netanyahu thanks U.S. for ammunition, UNSC veto. Israeli PM Netanyahu has thanked the U.S. president for providing Israel with important ammunition for the continuation of the war in Gaza. At the beginning of a cabinet meeting in Jerusalem, Netanyahu thanked Biden for the military aid and the U.S. veto of the UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire. Netanyahu did not specify which arms deliveries he was referring to. Israel's military is bolstered by more than $3.8 billion of military aid a year from the U.S. This is thanks to a record $38 billion deal over 10 years signed under former U.S. President Barack Obama in 2016. Of the $3.8 billion provided this year, $500 million has been for Israel's missile defenses. It's just past 2 p.m., 12 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. Here's a recap of the major developments in the last few hours. PM Netanyahu has rebuffed calls to end the war, describing them as inconsistent with supporting the war aim of eliminating Hamas. The executive board of the WHO has convened for an emergency session where the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza tops the agenda. Hamas's armed wing says it attacked Israeli soldiers in the Jabalia refugee camp and Al-Fallujah areas in the northern Gaza Strip. Israeli jets have targeted areas around towns in southern Lebanon, including Nir Yaroun, Ramesh and Ida al-Shab. At least 28 Palestinians, including a woman, were detained in several overnight raids by Israeli forces, according to the news agency Wafa. Israeli army says it struck more than 250 Hamas-related targets inside Gaza in the past 24 hours. U.S. has lost its legitimacy after Security Council veto. The U.S. has lost its legitimacy in the world order after vetoing a UN Security Council resolution that called for a ceasefire in Gaza, Wada Kanfar, president of Al-Sharq Forum, has told Al Jazeera. The Americans continue to be a major hegemony, thanks to their muscles, the huge army in the economic magnitude, but have lost their legitimacy to represent the international consensus, Kanfar, a former Director General of Al Jazeera Media Network, said on the sidelines of the Doha Forum. But despite the US's opposition to halting the fighting in Gaza, the current situation is not going to make the Palestinians less determined to get their rights, he added. Israel's aim is to Palestinians from Gaza into Egypt, UNRWA chief. Israel may be preparing to force Palestinians in Gaza en masse into Egypt, according to the head of the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees. UNRWA head Philippe Lazzarini issued the warning in an op-ed for the LA Times on Saturday, as 1.9 million Palestinians remain trapped on the southern edge of the Gaza Strip amid dire humanitarian conditions. The developments we are witnessing point to attempts to move Palestinians into Egypt, regardless of whether they stay there or are resettled elsewhere, wrote Lazzarini, adding that the Israeli military's destruction of northern Gaza was the first stage of such a scenario. Its advancing campaign in the southern city of Khan Yunis, which has pushed Palestinians from there to the far southern tip of the enclave, is the next phase, he said. If this path continues, leading to what many are already calling a second Nakba, Gaza will not be a land for Palestinians anymore, Lazzarini said. We now bring you more from the Palestinian ambassador to the UK who has been speaking to our colleague Yoruba Jamal at the Doha Forum. He says more can be done by regional allies to help the Palestinian people. The region has many tools to support us, including pressuring governments like the US, because there is a steady relationship, in providing protection to our people and accountability to the killer, Zomlot said. We need to make sure that this does not happen again. We should not wait for the next tragedy, and the only way we ensure this does not happen again is accountability. On October 8, Iman Radwan called her parents from the occupied West Bank and spoke to them for the last time. They were in Gaza where Israel had launched a relentless bombardment following Hamas's deadly attack on Israeli villages and military outposts the day before. For years, Radwan had been unable to visit her parents regularly because Israel restricted Palestinians from moving between the West Bank and Gaza, with rare exceptions. She is one of thousands of Palestinians living in the West Bank to suffer from these restrictions. Now, those like Radwan fear their loved ones in Gaza may die in the war before they even have a chance to see them. U.S. enabling Israel to commit crimes against humanity. Husam Zomlot says the U.S. and the West are incapable of playing the role of an honest mediator. Today, we are faced with the very serious reality that the U.S. is simply enabling Israel to commit the most heinous crimes against humanity, he told Al Jazeera at the Doha Forum. It is genocide of an entire people, killing more than 17,000 of them, 70% of them are women and children. Israel is destroying the majority of our homes, hospitals, schools and infrastructure. It is turning Gaza as per the plan to become unlivable. International community must talk about consequences to Israel's violations. Violations of international law in Gaza have raised concerns about the future of world order as we know it, according to Dr. Dalia Fahmy, Director of International Relations and Diplomacy at Long Island University. There's more at stake than just Gaza, Fahmy told Al Jazeera on the sidelines of the Doha Forum taking place in Qatar's capital. What's also at stake is the role of the international community, international law and international norms. Fahmy said Israel's rights violations amid the Gaza war demonstrate that international law is not enforced for all people in all places. To stop this trend, the international community must move beyond words and start talking about consequences to Israel's actions, she said. During Israel's siege on Gaza for more than 2 months, it has been accused of numerous violations of international law, some amounting to war crimes. They include subjecting Palestinians to collective punishment by bombing densely populated civilian areas and cutting off humanitarian aid to the war-torn population. Israel's long-term occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, as well as expanding settlements in the West Bank, also violate international law. The PA never left Gaza, says Palestinian PM. When asked if the Palestinian Authority, PA, would be willing to take over the Gaza Strip after the end of the war, PM Shatea said the PA had never left Gaza. "We are not the Red Cross. These are our people, this is our land," he told Al Jazeera at the Doha Forum. For the last 17 years, and even before that for 30 years, the PA has been providing every single assistance to Gaza. "We are the ones who took care of the water, electricity, sewage, education and health. My name is Kingsley. Please like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified whenever we post, you won't regret it."